Dun, 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 dun. This is curb your curb your motivation. What is that? Whatever. Welcome to the podcast. Good morning. AR Tales, aka the A.R.T podcast. I am but at the ding. And it is a beautiful Wednesday, March 7th, or is it? No, yeah, 7th. Just had to check that real quick. It's not even March though. That's where the lie is. It's April. um, I gotta say, I am in great spirits. The book is being thoroughly reviewed and looked at by people, and the support has been resounding so far. I am just amped and geeked and beyond excited to finally get this book out. All the graphics. I finally changed up the setting where I'm at the office a little bit. You can see a little bit of the art I have behind me, and of course, just like in true author fashion, it's not fully shown, right? It's just a foreshadowing of a portrait. But I have to say that I'm beyond moons, honestly, especially the office how it is now. I wish I could have I might buy a separate camera just so I can have a little rotoscope and show you the office. I mean, it just looks phenomenal. I actually just made this beautiful little scene that I'm back and forth whether I should show it right now. It is just this thing that I literally made from stuff from the dollar store. I picked up like this. I was actually talking to a friend of mine. I went and bought some stuff from the art supply section at the dollar store, which feels like an oxymoron, right? How is there an art department section at the dollar store? But hey, there is, and I'm not knocking it because I had a couple stuff in it, just things that more based for like kids to do finger painting with, just things that you would normally throw away. But I kind of put it together and made this little scene that's actually reminiscent from the story, the scene of them discovering Mana and Gamul, which you will see in chapter 2. It is really great representation of it. Really happy with how it turned out. I'll definitely be posting on social media. And you know what? As I'm looking at it, I'm definitely going to show it off a little bit because I worked too hard for this shit. Right? As you can see, it actually is double-sided. So one is kind of like a black and white. And I have to say that, my God, in the camera, it pops out really great. And then the other one is more of a your kind of cactus, green, yellow. And then as you see at the bottom, there's kind of like the dead wood, some rocks that I painted gold and sprinkled some salt on it as it was drying to give it kind of that shining, shimmering effect to make it look like gold ignox. And then in the sand, as you can see, there's these little blue pellets, these little blue crystals. And the blue crystals are actually what mana is. That's how it looks like. It's the power source that I had talked about before in previous podcasts, to kind of the main mineral resource that planet has in order to give out major plot point for the next book. Yeah, so forth, yada yada. As always, this podcast is brought to you by One Audio. The power of music, you gotta buy the gear to use it. Hey. Oh, freestyle. Yo, you gotta buy their gear. Bing, 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 bing. Put it to your ear. Bing, bada, boom, bam, 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 bam. You do not fear. Bing, boom, boom, bam, 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 bam. They got great fucking gear. Bing, bada, ding, 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 ding. OneAudio.com. ONEODIO.com. Go to checkout. Code special AR SPECIAL AR. Get some gift codes, some coupons, and kick back a little over here to your podcast that brings it to you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for the new group cast. Oh, and by the way, for the people that aren't hip to it, that haven't listened to the latest recording, Fridays is going to be the official group cast release day. We have another one coming to you on this Friday. Great one. I believe off the top of my head, the guests are Tara, A. Lake, Lori Okonowski, Might have butchered that name a little bit. Excusez-moi. Then we have Jamil Effin and Adam Gaffin. So it was a great mix-up. We had some female perspective that we were direly missing from the first episode. Turned out into a great just amalgam of different minds talking and everything. It was, and I have to say, not that every episode isn't an honest blast to record. I have to say those group casts are hold a little special little ribbon in my heart because they really are at another level of fun. It feels like I'm at a bar with a couple of my friends and we're getting drunk. But as far as I was concerned, nobody was getting drunk, which really we should do, huh? Un poquito. Un pocaling. News for merch and everything coming out. As you see, well, as I kind of have around me, I am surrounded in my merch now. Surrounded. We have the portraits. We have the little artistic displays that I just showed off for you. All those things are available. Neotino.net. You can also just hit me up if you want to do a personal commission. I'll get you. Also, for any prospective authors out there, we have actually just fully. Now, we started this a little while ago. I just kept it under wraps until we kind of get our portfolio up, get some clients. But we have some clients underway. They are blown away by the work that we've been able to do. And I'm glad that I was actually able to follow through because there's nothing worse than your mouth writing a ticket that your ass cannot cash. And thank God my ass is eventually an ATM, I guess. I don't know if that analogy really works, but you get what I'm saying. It's actually worked. The clients are happy. So we are offering custom made, fully custom made. None of this Photoshop, none of this, getting pictures off Google, fully custom made to your desires specifically. We have covers, we have graphics, we have everything that you need as far as artistic things. You just send over your request, and I'm telling you, we will get you a quote for it as low as you can imagine. We're popping them off starting like 100 change. No problem. Bing, boom, bow. What else do you want? Fully custom made. I can tell you just from personal experience, that is not the price you're going to find from other graphics. And I hate to emphasize marketing and just like trying to sell it to you on so much on the podcast, but I have to say it is something that I do feel a little like passionate about because the amount of gut punches and just smacks to the chin that I got when I first jumped in here and try to be cool by getting like a really artistic and well-made cover was just outrageous. And the horror stories I heard from other artists, oh my god. There's one artist, not going to mention the name, but if you do some research on the podcast, it's pretty easy to deduce who. That he was talking to me, and I guess I just kind of narrowed it down by admitting he was a he. But hey, maybe I'm throwing you off the track. Maybe it was a dog. Ooh, who knows? But they were telling me that their cover, which I admittedly looks phenomenal, it really does look phenomenal, cost $5,000 to make. Now I'm over here doing math because you know how I am. If you listen to the podcast, you know how it's an innate character flaw. I always have to start doing math for no apparent reason. So as we talked about before, the standard for authors getting is $350 for your general sales of the thing, and lower is a thing too. If we're being 100% honest with one another, that's why this industry is such a thing of you really have to hit it hard, which is why I understood his need for wanting to spend so much on a cover. But I can tell you that we can do a lot, at least equal for a lot phenomenally less. I mean, Jesus, you give us $5,000 and my God, we'll give you covers for like your author life. We'll give you a lifetime deal because Jesus, I mean, that's just outrageous. So that is going to be the end of that's the end of the whole sale basically. Gonna jump on to some stuff that has been in my mind, specifically with the whole writing scheme. And again, excuse me if I'm a little, because I've been pulling all nighters like, like I'm popping mints, but just got to make sure that everything is up and up for the release, and make sure that all the hard work that I did prior isn't negated by me not doing hard work now. Know what I mean? So one thing that I have hopped back onto, and it is a recommendation actually from another Bookstagrammer, another book YouTuber, booktuber, whatever the hell you want to call it. Books by Adrian, Mr. Adrian Santiago. I had a recording with him last week. It will be up in a couple. And it was really just a great thing. And we had a lot of, we mind melded a lot. And one of the things that we really went in and geeked out about was Vince Gilligan's world building with Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and also with El Camino, right? The Breaking Bad movie that was on the Netflix exclusive. So the reason we geeked out so much on the man's world building is just how intense his characters are, the character arc that you see. You see the ascent or the descent of Walter turning into Heisenberg. You see Saul being or starting off as a more noble character, slowly being diminished by honestly just life, and a real willingness to not only work hard but to make it yourself, which is something that I am crazy empathetic for. I mean, my heart, I'm in the exact same boat. I understand being in a position where, corporate wise, on paper, who wouldn't want your position? You're a relatively young person in a high paying field, in a high paying job within that field. And as far as relative stress and relative workload, I mean, you have it made. But even then, there's something that sits in the core of your stomach that just doesn't sit right. You know that you've always had it in you to go on your own path. That's something that you've always wanted to do. But yet there you are in a seemingly perfect situation and you're unhappy. And it's unreal. And again, personal experience, I can really confirm these type of emotions. How the character seems to get gradually happier with shittier situations, just because those shittier situations are one that he brought himself into prior to situations that were thrust upon him or that he had to conform to in order to succeed in life. And again, the fact that Vince Gilligan can take something that's just so far out. I have a great thing for law. If you heard me arguing in a bar, you would definitely think I'm a lawyer or think that I'm like practicing for the bar or something. But for the most part, that's out of my life. I'm not a lawyer. If they start talking about penal codes and all these things, that's out of my head. But the fact that they can take a character like that and just bring it down to a level that it just hits home. Same thing with Walter. I can't say that I've ever made meth. Maybe that's something. Maybe that's a mark on my end. Maybe I need to live a little more. Experiment with some meth making on the weekends. Who knows? But for the most part, his life experiences, the cancer, having a child with disabilities, being pushed out of a company that basically you created with your own genius, and you basically let it go out of pride and a whole bunch of regress feel. I mean, all those things are just so out of my wheel. But then it's the through line of a person who has all these regressed feelings, that live basically the 80, 85, 90% of their life completely just on the straight and narrow, and letting all those thoughts that would normally fester into a person and bubble out, just letting them boil up and really keeping them down. and just keeping yourself focused on your family and just being calm. And then you have this life-altering situation. He finds out he has cancer. The realization that, you know, everything that he's worked for, all his genius, quote unquote, is gonna not only do nothing for his life, but it's gonna leave his family in squalor, right? With a new baby that they just had and all these stresses. And that is the through line that you can sit back and think like, oh, okay, wow. And I think when you study that type of writing is when you're able to answer your own questions about the abilities and the things that you should do with your own writing. Now, again, no condescension here. This is an indie podcast. I'm an indie author. I'm not a bestseller yet, so like my grain of salt with the smallest tweeds that you can pick at, that you can pick to actually like go through it and sift it. But one thing that I frequently see on Reddit or on even the group chats that I now have with other authors on Twitter, on Instagram, frequently I will hear somebody ask, "Oh, I think I thought of a new work in process, of a new whip with XYZ character and this and all these new elements, but I'm unsure if whether it'll make a good story, whether I should follow through with it." And the answer resoundingly 100% is always yes, if you do it right. If you find the right through line, you can make a story about anything. You can make a story with a dog as the protagonist. You can make a story with the alien as a protagonist from a different planet that doesn't even breathe, that uses lungs, has nothing. If you find a one emotional through line that can make you feel for that thing, that's it. There was a great discussion a while back I had on Reddit. I think it was when I first hopped on to the writing scene on it, and people were talking about that exact same principle. And not really so much so, but they kind of glazed over the topic while talking about something else. And somebody had quoted a passage from Stephen King. I can't remember what book, but they were talking about that one of the books opens up with a passage about a squirrel dying, and that just the writing of it makes you actually feel empathetic over a squirrel. I mean, who gives a fuck about a squirrel, right? I'm not I'm not like against animal lives, all that shit, but like who thinks about a squirrel? Who's really sitting back and just like wakes up one day, I hope the squirrels are all right. I hope they have enough nuts. Ah! I don't wake up that way. And if you do, God bless you. But I don't. So just the fact that the right type of writing, especially with a master that is the master that is Stephen King, the fact that you can turn around and do anything, that really shows the degree of just the craft, right? And how I guess that's like one of the most exciting things about it, that as more people get comfortable and kind of start answering their own question of like, oh yeah, you know what, I can write this work. The things that will progress as we continue going on, especially with self-publishing coming into it, I think is really going to be something. Honestly, it brings so much just like wonder and awe to my heart, to my mind, thinking how far this can progress. Because for years, the whole idea of you even having a voice, being able to get published, was determined by a group of other people that were 100% looking at your work as a marketing tool only. So if you wrote a protagonist about a dog for whatever reason, or something crazy, they would just turn around and be like, that's not marketable. Dogs are cool and whatnot, but cats are kind of like a little hotter right now. Maybe you should turn around the plot for that, trying to nitpick or something in order to make it more palatable for general audiences and XYZ and all these things. But as Bill Burr said one time in a podcast that I will never ever forget, the people that you want to follow, the type of creatives and the type of producers that you want to follow, are the people that do not give a fuck. Quentin Tarantino one time was getting lashed out for like it was during an interview with like I can't remember who or what, and they were like talking about him, that he shouldn't be doing this and shouldn't be doing that, shouldn't be doing this, and he responded with a very eloquent, "No, I don't give a fuck. This is what I'm doing. I'm Tarantino. These are the movies that I make. That's the movies that I make because they say Tarantino on it. If you don't agree with the style, go to the left. If you agree with it, go to the right. No harm either way. But don't come at me talking about I need to change my shit just because you don't agree with it." And I think that authors finally have a medium now to be able to do that. So just the things that are going to go out, the far out crazy ideas that are going to come because of this are just going to be amazing. And of course, there's also a double-headed tail, right? There's going to be a lot of copycats, a lot of people that come out with just, you know, oh, I like this book. Let me make my version of this book, which is nothing to work at. Writing is a great skill, and even fan fiction does a lot for writing skill because it just allows you, everything is a craft. You really have to sharpen this writing game with a stone and some water. You really do. I really believe that. But another thing that has been just blowing my mind with the whole Breaking Bad thing is it's making me wonder what is blurring the lines between the characters being written and the actors being so involved with the lore now that they themselves are able to kind of autopilot a lot of the scenes, especially in Breaking Bad for whatever. I mean, especially with a Better Call Saul for whatever reason, and I can't really confirm. So if anybody can kind of like dial back, tell me it's like, hey, you know what, you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about. Hey, I agree, but I just have noticed there seems to be a lot more improvisation in Better Call Saul, and I could be wrong, but just knowing Bob Odenkirk's background, the person that plays Better Call Saul, I mean, that plays Saul Goodman or Jimmy McGill, the person, that actor, he has a background in comedy and a great comedic mind, and not only comedy but improvisational comedy. He had a sketch comedy show with David Cross a couple years ago. That was great. He's a great comedic mind, and just off the top, if you ever listen to his interviews, great. So just considering that, and considering that he actually does have a producing credit in the show, I wonder how much is the world building versus the character now being able to like fully fledged and be like, oh, you know what, Vince, I think it would kind of go this way. I think this would lean into a certain emotion, into a certain degree, a little higher than you expected before. And I have to say that is one of the things that geeks me out the most about being able to turn. Hopefully, I hope I really it would just be phenomenal. It would be out of my mind to be able to turn one of my works into a screenplay, into a visual aspect, because that's one of the things that I geek out the most. No matter how in depth you go with your own writing, it's still just within your own head. It's just you, which is the thing that I love about writing. Don't get me wrong, but I can't imagine when you get to the point that now you're like, oh, you're gonna play Haas, you're gonna play Zako, you're gonna play Jid, and those actors not only take your lines and do what you want with them, but they're able to go heights that you've never done before, that you've never conceived before. We talked about before with the whole thing with George Lucas and the Han Solo character, how when they had like the whole love scene of Leia and him, that he just got captured. What George had written was a huge admittal of love by Harrison Ford's character, this huge like, oh, you know what, Leia, I love you back, blah, 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 blah. But instead, Harrison Ford just chose to keep it with a simple, I know. And that's it. It became legendary. Not even a moment of like, oh, that's, legendary, and that's a legendary Star Wars movie moment. No, that's a legendary movie moment now. I've heard that being quoted in many conversations about with movie buffs and with movie discussions or movie details on Reddit. It really is a legendary scene and shows a lot of what the concept that I'm describing now. And I, again, geeked, cannot wait in order to experience that for myself. It is just a phenomenal notion. And I have to say, one thing that I'm gonna kind of end the podcast on, and it's a movie that has been quoted endlessly, specifically at at the start of 4 years ago. Idiocracy. My God. And one of the things that I had watched Idiocracy before, a couple times actually. Oh, excuse me. Had a little itch in my throat. I had watched Idiocracy, many times before. Great, phenomenal movie. But one thing that I hadn't picked on, or that I forgot just out of my own idiocy, was that it was made by Mike Judge. Mike Judge, if people are unaware, are the people that is the creative genius really behind Beavis and Butthead, as well as King of the Hill, and a couple other just great stuff. He's even had some very small movie roles, so I didn't even know it was him, and he was just knocked out. It was great. He played for the people that are no kid Spy Kids. He actually plays the bad guy, the leader of the OSS. That is Mike Judge. He's the voice of Hank, and I believe the Bobby too. Again, just great stuff. And I think it blends so much with the idea of comedy and drama. Again, I chose a really bad time to start this little section of everything, but what it is when the Greeks started theater, the whole mask of the like the whole smiling and frowning face. What they do is that was one genre. They didn't view comedy and drama as two different things. They looked at it as one thing. Like that was that is what life is. It's a comedic drama. It's like horrible things happen, but if you look at it in a certain lens, it can be hilarious. So the fact that I think that these writers somehow have a great blend of it, talking about Better Call Saul, you have Bob Odenkirk who plays, Saul Goodman, very dramatic, but has a comedic background. He brings a lot of comedic light to the character, but that almost plays hand in hand with the drama because you almost understand that the comedy is a coping mechanism for larger things at play. And it really just ties in together with the world and everything. And then you have Breaking Bad, lead, the person that played Walter White, played Heisenberg, Bryan Cranston, which another person that me and Books by Adrian were going off on. I mean, the man's legend, but Bryan Cranston played Malcolm in the Middle. Hilarious TV show. I mean, the endlessly quotable. The amount of memes that you can pull off that are endless. That show is fucking hilarious. Great golden standard of comedy and sitcoms. Truly, honestly, I'm not even saying it's really one of those shows that I would put it up there with like Modern Family, in that you can get to like season like 10, 11, like far seasons until you get to that feeling of like, oh, I've heard this joke before. It takes a long time to get stale. Really does. And even great shows that I'm not going to mention get stale a little after, still great, but they get stale. Like The Office starts to get stale towards the end a little bit. I mean, still great. The later episodes when you have the midnight Michael or whatever the thing, and then you have the dinner party episode, which is phenomenal. Those are later seasons, and then you have the introduction of all of the new characters that come in season 7 and the new branch, and all great additions to the show. But again, as far as comedies, like you start to get it, oh, the camera's gonna pan to Jim, he's gonna give the right. It's just how it is. We know it. But for whatever reason, Malcolm in the Middle was just stayed. The show was just hilarious through and through. It just showed like the American family just so well, and just families in general. It doesn't have to be country based or nation based at all. And again, just the fact that they were able to balance these things, that really brings into light the whole idea of, comedic lens isn't just something you throw in there for like lols. I think it really is representative of the larger drama of the world, and I think in writing it's really crucial. I don't think that it's a mystery that some of my favorite movies and some of my favorite writing all in life always had that little bit of wit, always had that little bit of humor to it. I think it's because those writers understood that all these genres, for as much as we like to go back and forth on, really there's only one. It's writing. you know Because depending on the light that you put it, certain things can even look like. I was having a conversation with a phenomenal letter that I just hired. Phenomenal lady, so great to have her. Hopefully I'm not jinxing myself here, but she's been just phenomenal so far. And we were talking about 1984, and she actually asked me if I would consider that a sci-fi, which undoubtedly I would, because it's, you know, a lot of the things that move the plot are based off technology, which is, you know, based on science fiction, XYZ. But I thought it was immediately interesting that she would consider that it wouldn't be. And it made me think back on like, oh, you know what? To certain people, it isn't. To other people, it's more of a societal commentary, XYZ. And you know what? I think in the future, even things like Ready Player One or things like that will be viewed as in a more broad spectrum. And I think that's really interesting. Same thing with Frankenstein, where I think Mary Shelley probably intended it to be definite more of a horror, especially that after reading her introduction, she definitely meant it to be to elicit the same emotions that she had when she read like you know, some crazy haunting stories when they were boarded up and on a vacation with her man and her friends, and she was trying to elicit those emotions, so that's what she wrote Frankenstein. But over time, I don't really think that Frankenstein can be looked at as a strict horror anymore. I think, you know, it's indicative of a lot more. It encompasses a lot more human emotions and human elements than just horror. And I think that's kind of the thing with like all writing. You know, there's the speculative fiction, there's the romance genres, the humor, the drama, the XYZ. But in reality, I think really great writing has all those things innately. And the different genres are more just to differentiate what gets highlighted more. You know, maybe if you're not a fan of sci-fi, but if you're a person of fantasy, you would have the same things basically, but the difference being that in sci-fi, the explanation for it would be like, oh, it's whatever nuclear drive that's powered by the radiation of the sun, versus in fantasy, it would be like, oh, it's driven by the thoughts and prayers of the seven gods that run the kingdom. Listen, it's the same shit. The plot is the same. It's just the light that you put it in, right? The difference between a romance and like a I don't know, like a thriller would be that the end of the day, the romance is the highlight, right? You want the love scenes, you want the XYZ, or the audience does. And the difference between a thriller is that they're still loving it, but the highlight is in the thrilling aspects of it. It's the little tensions, the little moments of, oh shit, I don't know what's gonna happen, right? So really everything kind of melts together. And why I kind of dropped on this whole, you know, loop tangent, who knows? But if you're a fan of the podcast, you know this is A.R.T, right on schedule with my rambling ass. So we are at the end. This is going to be the end of the podcast, right? You already know neotino.net for everything. We have the merch up. We have all these great stuff up. Social medias, I'm hopping back on now that work is getting a little dwindled, although I have to hop on taxes. I'll be honest with you. I just saw that schedule notification pop up and I really completely forgot about it. I really thought I was going to be able to relax for a little bit today. Gosh darn it. But no, gotta crank on that. Make sure I get it out by next week because I completely let that slide with everything going on. But this is going to be the end of the podcast. A.R.'s Tales, aka the A.R.T podcast. Check with us on Friday for our second group cast. You already know the podcast and the YouTube videos are not going to be available at the same time. You can listen or watch however the hell you want to do it, however you want to do it. Just make sure to show some love. Show me some love. Or if not, show me some spite, whatever. Do what you got to do. Just make yourself heard, you know, give me your opinion. And this is it. Make sure to listen on Friday for the group cast and make sure to listen on Monday when we have a new author peer vlog. I honestly cannot remember off the top of my head who's going to be releasing that day. Oh, you know what? It's Brittany Leonard. Check her out. Really awesome episode. I cannot wait for that one. It's going to be great. Again, end of the podcast. You check with us on our next release day. Peace out, folks.